Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We are here this week, back together again.
Oh my gosh. Noelle in her teacher voice.
In this new way of doing things that is sometimes uncomfortable.
Yeah.
No, but for real, last week we started talking about messaging, ways that we can pay attention to different media biases that are out there. We talked about 4 or 5 different types, in terms of spinning, how different language is used to spin facts, emotionalism, sensationalism, opinion that's kind of phrased as fact. And so lots of different ones primarily from allsides.com, which we recommended everybody go listen to. Actually, it was funny because at the beginning of the episode, I read a statistic about how 72% of Americans think news is fake and reported in that manner. And we realized during that episode that we did not fact check that.
Yeah.
So we wanted to start off today's episode with what we found.
We did our work. Okay? We did our homework.
Yeah. And so it actually was a survey of about 4,000 adults. It was during 2018. So a few years ago, about 4 years ago, 3 years ago. What is it? 2021?
Yeah.
About 3 years ago.
In 2018, but yeah.
Right. And so there were a lot of people that were included in it, Republicans, Democrats, independent. So trying to kind of get an idea of what people felt about the media. And so it was asking, how often do you think news sources report news that they know to be fake, false, or purposefully misleading? At that time, total was 72%. Interestingly, the GOP was saying 92% of them believe that sources are reporting news to be fake, false, or purposely misleading. And when we read that, we were like, wait, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But then we thought about the context of 2018 and how Trump at that time was purposefully spinning things really so that it would be in his favor, right? He was exacerbating to make people skeptical among conservatives, again, using that polarizing language that all the news that was coming out about him was fake news. And so it would make sense that Republicans who are filling out this survey are like, all the news that we read is fake and it's purposeful. Because when you look at the 72%, which was the total, 53% was Democrat, saying that they thought it was fake news or purposefully misleading news, and the GOP was 92%. So how powerful was Trump's statement at that time, right, of playing to these conservative beliefs about how everything that's out there was fake and misleading.
Well, it's just so scary. Again, we talk about, putting your trust in one news outlet, one leader, any one thing. And that's so detrimental. You know what I mean? And I'm like, there's no one person on this earth that's going to tell you information that's that correct all the time.
Well, when you think about the whole thing, when we had the interview, when we were talking about white supremacy and white nationalism and everything during season 2, and how we discussed how this is really a new cult, kind of the Trump of personality. People just, his followers, just whatever he says, they believe. It's that's it. Trump said it, so it's true. And you see it in the effects of how they're then judging the news that they're receiving because they're just believing what he's saying.
It's propaganda. And we'll talk about that a little bit today, but propaganda or I forget what the other term is, but really any of these things, when you believe in someone so much, it's like these lies, conspiracy theories, similarly, right? Same kind of difference. So,
And then the other thing that I thought was interesting was that it was saying that most people say that they can spot a piece of fake news, which, we played last week.
Did you see how badly we did? Okay.
We got one right.
Horribly.
I think you got 2.
Pretty sure I was drunk by the end of the episode because I had so much champagne and because I couldn't figure it the fuck out.
I got maybe one right. Clearly we weren't good at that. And we're going to play a game, 2 truths and a lie, see if we're any better this week. But Democrats and Republicans were pretty much equal. They're both mostly confident in their ability to identify if a piece of news was fake or not, which I feel no, none of us.
It's just not well. And I think people have this idea that fake news is clearly and blatantly, over the top or something like that. And that's just not the case. Sometimes it sounds very similar to these regular, news articles that you're reading. The information seems factual. It makes sense. Maybe it's already in line with something that you believe or something you've experienced. So okay, that seems right. So it's just not the case. I think we need to stop being so overzealous, honestly.
Well, 70. So let's say it says 78% of Republicans are confident and 73% of Democrats. And then when you look at it, only 57% of Democrats, though, will verify facts. 48% of Republicans verify facts. So you're super confident, right? Like 3/4 of the people are really confident, but only like half of you are even fact checking. Only 43%, again, like using websites to check facts, not just Google, but then fact checking websites. And only 44% of Democrats will actually go and verify the validity of a website. And only 29% of Republicans. So you're also confident, but like 1/4 of you were even checking these websites. Half of you were fact checking. So you're just confident based on your own like bias of that.
Yeah, your own bias.
At
and
face
also,
value of what you're receiving is accurate.
Yeah. And I think how legitimate something looks, something Lisa had mentioned is that sometimes you go to fact check and you fact check and it's a website that looks reputable.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like, it's almost, it's like so mind blowing that we think that we're checking our information, but there's just so much falseness out there.
Yeah. Well, then where you're getting it from too. Like when we were doing research for this and we were looking at a website and I said something and it was on the website and you're like, well, you said it and it's here. So it must be true.
Yeah, exactly. That's two sources, right? I mean, Noelle just thinks it, but I believe her. So,
and like, if the website, you had actually mentioned it in the last episode, like if this is a source I trust and they're stating it, then I almost give them the benefit of the doubt because I trust the source.
Yeah.
So we did fact check. We did go to the source, kind of, look to see
so a little bit more
even true.
Yeah. So we make mistakes too, but also I think it's important to be able to say that. You know what I mean? That we don't know everything. We're trying our best to. We're all growing, and it's all a journey. We're growing, throughout time, and as long as you continue to grow over time, that's all that really matters.
Yeah.
So.
And I thought we also learned some like other interesting things from going. I mean, the article that we read that we got the 72% from just put that as the statement, right? But then we saw some of the differences and similarities with Republicans and Democrats and like the context of that time, which is also important when you're looking at it. So we're going to start off today with a game.
Game time.
Game time.
Oh, yeah. It's game time. Anyways, 2 truths and a lie. Okay. Here we go.
All right. So do you want to start or do you want me to start?
I will start. Okay.
So basically we're just going to read 3 headlines that we took off of
all sides.
From all sides. Yeah,
mainly.
Some of mine are from some other different ones too.
Okay. Cool.
And then we're going to decide which one is the lie out of the 3 headlines. Yeah. And you are
okay. So my categories were education, racism, and inequality, I believe. So I forget what is for what, but here we go. So 3 headlines. Okay, the first one, DeSantis to prohibit schools from forcing children to wear masks. Second, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says parents, and I'm obviously using Florida because we're in Florida. So Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says parents should decide if their children wear masks to school. And lastly, Republican Governor Ron DeSantis continues to lead Florida into treacherous COVID numbers. What does this mean for the rest of the country?
I mean, the first 2 are happened. He's saying both those things. I'm going to say the third one's a lie.
Nice job! You got it right. Okay. You got it right. Is this another drinking game? I'm turning everything into a drinking game.
Okay. Which one do I want to do? I'm going to do this one. Ready? Mm-hmm. Federal District Court in Washington rules in favor of Capitol Hill defendant. January 6th riots no different than racial justice protests. That's the first one. The second one.
I'm already overwhelmed.
More than 535 arrested so far in Capitol riot case, while more than 300 suspects remain unidentified. That's the second one. Mm-hmm. Third one. Florida pastor facing U.S. Capitol riot charges has court hearing.
I'm going to go with the first or the third one is the lie, and I'm going to go with the
She's whispering.
First, third. I can't get anything from her.
Nope. Not nodding this time.
Third.
The pastor one?
Yeah.
No, that is fact.
Damn it! Which is the lie? Is it even the first one? Oh, that's close.
Yeah. Okay. You have to drink if you got it wrong.
No, I drank the first time just for fun. Okay. Callie, do you want some alcohol? All right. Okay. Cities grapple with homelessness as tent clusters proliferate. Apple has a growing homeless encampment on its property. The homeless debate: is shelter a human right?
So can you read the second one again? Apple what?
Apple has a growing homeless encampment on its property.
Read the third one again.
The homeless debate: is shelter a human right?
I feel like that's the lie. Is that true?
Yeah, good job.
I was right again?
Yeah, you're right again. You're doing a good job. I'm excited.
Well,
my lies suck, basically, is what's happening.
I know the first one's true. The second one, Apple's in California, right?
Yep.
And there I know that they have
a very large
number of growing homeless population.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying they're shipping them all out to where we don't know.
Maybe just make more programs for the homeless.
Good idea.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Alexandria City Council votes to create independent community policing review board. Also, headlines are difficult to read. There's like no grammatical structure.
There's not. Oh my God.
I feel like I don't know how to read.
First of all, I was like, are these letters supposed to be capitalized or not? And I'm like, some of them are, some of them aren't. And I'm like trying to write it. It's only for me to read, but I'm like, I want it to be right.
Okay. Well, I'll read that one again for you. Okay. Alexandria City Council votes to create independent community policing review board.
Okay.
Police reform negotiations in Congress are teetering on collapse. Cops may be to blame.
Let's read that one again.
Police reform negotiations in Congress are teetering on collapse. Cops may be to blame. As more cities move towards a decreased police presence, crime rates rise to record levels.
The first one is a lie. Fuck! Second, third.
Is
it really? I wouldn't have thought that. Okay, I suck at this game, and there's no more alcohol. Look, I've already...
Okay. Oh, we're going to take a break. Oh, yeah, I moved it.
I'm back. All right, you ready?
Just drink from the bottle at this point. Okay. Oh, this is so bubbly. It's never a good idea.
You told me I believed you. Your trusted source, Noelle.
I said it very confidently.
You did. Oh, my nose. All right. Okay, shut up. All right.
Okay, good.
What is CRT and how it's killing our kids? Hundreds of communities.
I can't see. I'm not looking.
Hundreds of communities.
I'm not a shooter.
Okay. All right. The first one. What is CRT and how is it killing our kids? Or how it is killing our kids? Second, hundreds of communities declared racism a public health crisis. Third, no, Texas lawmakers aren't stripping MLK and KKK from state education requirements.
Read it one more time. Read them all one more time.
What is CRT and how is it? What is CRT and how it is killing our kids?
Okay.
Hundreds of communities declared racism a public health crisis. Or the third one, no, Texas lawmakers aren't stripping MLK or KKK from state education requirements.
I know the first one's a lie.
Good job. Good at this game. You did really good with this game. You did. You really did. I'm very proud of you. Let me drink. It's like a win-win. You win and I drink. Wait, is that how it's supposed to go? Oh,
I don't know. I'll drink with you, okay? Here, cheers. I'm with you.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, my turn. Here we go.
Okay. Ohio man charged with hate crime related to alleged plot to commit mass shooting of women.
Lie.
Okay, let's wait for all of them.
Okay, I guess.
The second one. New hate crime bill infringes on freedom of speech. Offensive views deemed likely to stir up hate. Third one. New York City woman faces 4 hate crime charges in string of anti-Asian attacks.
If that's a lie, it was a good one because that could easily be real. I'm still going to go with the first one. It's a lie. It's not right.
The Ohio man? No,
Yeah.
that's a fact.
Fuck.
It was the second one. New hate crime bill infringes on freedom of speech. Offensive views deemed likely to stir up hate. That was the lie.
Well, here we are. And so like, ha ha ha, funny, we laugh, we drink, it's a drinking game. But the fact of the matter is, we made up these lies on our own.
You believed all my fake headlines.
I mean, for real, you know what I mean? And so if I believe what you're saying,
those fake headlines that you believed.
Yeah.
You believed that a federal district court in Washington ruled in favor of a Capitol Hill defendant.
But why wouldn't I, though? You know what I mean?
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I purposefully, when I was writing it, put in federal district court in Washington because anyone's going to believe something that's an actual institution, right? Okay, you believe that one. You believed crime rates were rising to record levels. Mm-hmm. You also didn't think, you picked the pastor. You thought that was a lie.
I didn't fucking know. I mean, I'm like, any one of them could be my thing is any one of these things could literally be a lie.
Right, but you still picked one, leaning towards one, right? Was it because it was a pastor? What made you pick that as thinking it was a lie?
Well, you have to read them again. I'm going to have to tell
Florida pastor facing U.S. Capitol riot charges has court hearing. You thought
what
that
were
was
the
a lie.
What were the other ones, though?
The federal district court ruling in favor of Capitol Hill defendant, and then the 535 arrested in the Capitol
I guess
riot
maybe
case.
it was because it was a pastor. I mean,
Never know.
I typically skew away from anything related to religion, so maybe that's why.
Never know.
And again, right? Because we talk about, what are the slants on media, and for me personally, with my own bias, my own opinions, my own experiences, I often don't trust religious figures.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when I hear something like that, it's like, oh well, that would make sense. You know? So yeah. So, something that we talk about, right? So all of these messages. And so I just said, what are my opinions of kind of pastors and religion and all these things based off of experience and, my upbringing and all of that. And we really think about how does media reinforce stereotypes that we believe? You know what I mean? And, in our last episode, we really talked about how it's ingrained in everything that we believe, the messaging that we receive, these biases that we have. And so they really help form and normalize these certain attitudes and beliefs that we have. So, we talk about coded language, which is specifically related to race on average. But it's also related to, these coded messages are in things like advertising, beauty standards, food, all types of things that we really just take in every day. So I actually want to read something from a website. So this is Ed Justice. And so coded language, just for everybody out there listening. So the definition is substituting terms describing racial identity with seemingly race-neutral terms that disguise explicit and or implicit racial animus. And so we'll be talking about this actually in other episodes with Rinku from, help me out here, Rinku from
the Narrative Initiative.
The Narrative Initiative, yeah. And so just kind of what language are we using and what messages does that send? And so for us...
What was the example though on that?
Yes.
It was a really good...
So the example that they give is... And here we go. 2 or 3 shoplifting incidents in a downtown area allegedly perpetrated by 8 to 10 African-American junior high students draw the attention of local news media. Quotes or descriptions from witnesses characterize the 11 to 12-year-olds using pack animal imagery and terms such as hyenas, menacing, and vicious to play to white stereotypes and fears of youth of color, right? And so, what are these messages that we've already received around Black youth, specifically males? What are our fears of them? How do we see imagery of them portrayed in movies, media, different things like that, you know? And so that really feeds into all of that, right? I think of, Asian hate crimes, and at least being from California, that's obviously a really big issue as of late. And a lot of it was portrayed as Black men are committing all of these crimes against, the elderly Asian community, right? And I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but that's how media was portraying it, right?
Right.
And what are our beliefs of, we can go all the way back to folks being enslaved, and after that, Jim Crow and the fear of Black males and how are they treating our white women, and they're vicious, they're harmful, they're aggressive, all of these things, all these narratives and this language that we use around making us feel fearful around Black men. So very similarly, right, this coded language. So I thought it was important to bring up, any thoughts on that?
Well, and I mean, we talked about it last week when we were discussing the slant and spin on things, and there were all those different like illegal immigrant versus illegal alien, migrant versus illegal alien, just the different ways that you can take the same situation or the same story or the same group of people and just word it differently to like feed into what people's biases are. I can think of different headlines, especially when everything was going on, in the Middle East, and you were looking at all the different headlines that we were seeing, and some of them would like cross words out. I feel like I want to find one on my phone.
Yeah, because I mean, there's a great one I've seen of that for like enslaved versus slave, or slave owner versus, I forget what the word is, but a lot of that, like, who are we placing blame on or responsibility on? Who is accountable for whatever the crime is? Right. Let's stop making light of a situation and name it for what the fuck it is.
Oh, yeah. Because you can easily make victims seem like offenders.
Yes.
The way that you're wording it. I want to go.
Well, and I mean, that even reminds me of, unfortunately, rape culture, right?
Yeah,
it's like, well, what were you wearing?
Yep.
What do you mean, what the fuck was someone wearing? Like, it doesn't matter. Why are we even bringing this question up? What did you do? What did you say? What was your tone?
Yeah.
All of those things, they don't matter in the grander scheme. Why are we even asking these questions?
Well, and it's blaming the victim.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
ultimately, like with all of these, right? It's either blaming the victim to take power away from them so that we can kind of disguise what the actual offenders are doing, or it's taking a bias that we already know exists for a certain community, Black males. I mean, that's like a narrative. We talk about messaging, and that's something that's so ingrained in our society of thinking of Black men as dangerous and aggressive. And so all you have to do is use one word to feed into people's biases of that.
That's very true.
So I can't find it right now on my phone. I have too many pictures, but but it was those ones like, that we found where it was literally rewording some of the headlines. Here's one. I found one. Perfect. And it was when everything was going on in like Palestine and everything. So the headline in the New York Times was, "Evictions in Jerusalem become focus of Israeli-Palestinian conflict." And then they reworded it to say, "Forced expulsions," so not evictions. Okay. "Forced expulsions in Jerusalem become focus of Palestinian struggle, not Israeli-Palestinian conflict." Because the context over there is not that this is the conflict, right?
Between both of them. Like, there's only one group fucking suffering out there.
Right.
Okay? Yeah.
And then then I'll give you like the first paragraph, right? "The effort to evict 6 Arab families from a contested neighborhood has drawn attention to the Israeli effort to remove Palestinians from parts of East Jerusalem and led to protests." So then they reworded that as saying, "The effort to, instead of evict 6 Arab families, ethnically cleanse Palestinians from, instead of a contested neighborhood, to their homes."
Yes. Also that part.
Right. "Has drawn attention to the Israeli, not effort, crime, to remove Palestinians from parts of East Jerusalem and led to protests."
That's so funny.
Now, I mean, we could do that with how many stories?
So many.
Right? But I remember like when everything was going on in Palestine and all of that was happening, there was a lot of these pages that I follow that were doing this with this topic specifically. And then, I think about all the ones that this could apply to so many things that we see, right? Here's another one. Well, this is like a myth fact one, right? Where it was saying it was a myth before Israel came to Palestine. It was just a desert, like in quotes. And then it like goes on to like give the actual history. Like I appreciated that during that time because I didn't know, to be honest, like didn't know the history of a lot of those things. And I would say the same could go into play for race relations for a lot of people in this country, not understanding where this bias comes from, of why we're saying this about Black males and what the history is of it. Like we talk about critical race theory, that could be a whole other many episodes that we do about it, right? But it's like teaching that, like how these communities became oppressed, what these biases and like crimes that were committed against these communities, and how we see the everlasting effects of it, and how that is a narrative that over decades and like has not changed. It's really in a lot of ways just become stronger.
Well, yeah. And you don't need to change it because there's so many people that don't fact check or think about their thinking as well. You know what I mean? So they just see, hear, read this information and they run with it, you know? And so that's extremely scary. I forget what the statistic was. And now I also need to fact check the statistic that I can't remember. You know what I mean? But it's a fairly large percentage. I mean, it was over 50%, right? Of folks that just consume media and believe it to be true without seeking without seeking anything else different from that, but also without seeking a entirely separate news entity.
Right. So
say you're listening to maybe Fox News, whatever, CNN, Fox News, whatever. You're listening to that, that's your only source. Like that's really scary.
Yeah.
You know? So.
Well, and we'll talk about ways to be media literate. Actually, you know, we can start getting into that a little bit.
Yeah. Let's do it.
But one of the things that I like to always say, because we say it in therapy, right? So I feel like a lot of this is like because we think about our biases and our distorted thinking and ways that we can create our reality off of really thought mistakes and faulty thinking on things that are illogical, or like prove yourself wrong. Yep. Let's try to find a situation or a scenario where that didn't apply. And like shifting that way of thinking about something, right? That frame. What's our frame of looking at it through? And like, let's try to find something where that doesn't fit.
That's very true.
And so a lot of times I think about that. Like, let me try to prove myself wrong. Like, let me look and see, like, is someone saying the opposite of it? Is this blown out of proportion? Is this even true? Like that kind of thing. So,
well, just even from a well-rounded perspective, you know what I mean? It's not necessarily that you're wrong in your thinking, you know, because also a lot of our thinking comes from our values and many other things, you know.
If it's not distorted.
Of course.
Though. Like, plenty of people have values and morals that are completely
very true.
Distorted.
I'm thinking of myself here.
Terrifying.
I'm like, but, you know, I think lost my train of thought.
I was saying, like, prove yourself wrong. You were saying sometimes it's not always that.
Yeah. So working to really kind of go against that, you know, it's not necessarily that you're wrong or that your thoughts are wrong, but really just being able to provide the best kind of realm of thought, the most cohesive and well-rounded, and looking at all sides.
Like trying for it to be balanced,
at
least in some way.
Well, and I mean, for me, you know, in all honesty, my biggest motivator is to look at arguments from the other side so I can have a better argument. You know what I mean?
All the time.
You know, honestly.
Like, what are they saying? And I need to know what they're saying. So
I'm ready.
It happened at a party that I was at a couple of weeks ago.
I wasn't there.
I mean, critical race theorists, you know, my husband says somehow I always get myself into these conversations. But it was later in the night after some drinking. And it just wound up being this conversation about critical race theory and how it was Marxist propaganda and applying it to just critical theory in general. And, you know, so many things during that conversation, because I haven't really had like a debate about critical race theory, like in that depth with someone. And I went home the next day and like looked up everything he was saying. First of all, a lot of things he said were untrue. But because like I hadn't researched Marxism to that depth or like looked into those things. No, now I know, right? Like, and it also just like gave me insight into like the way of thinking and how people are like framing this.
Very true.
Because he had said some things previous to that where I was surprised by his critical race theory comment. And I'm like, what's getting to you?
Yeah.
Because like 5 minutes ago, we were agreeing. On certain things.
Interesting.
So,
what do you think it was?
I think it's just probably like how the information that he's read about critical race theory and how it's being framed in the media right now. Because that was one of the things, I forget where I read it or if I was doing research for something, but it was saying critical race theory right now is so easily skewed because no one knows about it.
For sure.
People aren't researching what it actually is, what it means, fear tactics are just being used. White people scared of being made out to be racist, that's what all the curriculum is about and education is about. And it's not even really curriculum at this point, right? But all the like teaching of it and ideology of it is just that we're trying to make white people out to be bad people as they're all racist. And like people get off track with that. It feeds into their fear and it feeds into, you know, their beliefs and what they're worried about. And then they reject it and they put it into a way of thinking that they understand. He was a history buff. He knew a lot about history, Marxism, you know, all these different things. So I just thought it was interesting. Like, it gave me insight into like what maybe other people are thinking.
I do have a question. I don't know if this is something y'all discussed, but considering he was kind of a history buff, did he have a fairly decent understanding of like
redlining? We talked about certain things.
So like our America's history, the kind of context of folks being enslaved, stolen from their land, all that really.
Yep, but don't make white people out to be racist.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, and I think, you know, you talk about fear, but it's like so many people, I think anything across the board, regardless of what you're talking about, when people feel uncomfortable, they fight back. They fight back. It just is what it is. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's kind of worrisome.
Yeah. But I mean, I was slightly triggered too because
you were very triggered. I wasn't there for it, but I heard. And I mean, if it's anything like when we were in Tennessee and I was sleeping, you got into an argument with somebody who wore blackface for Halloween. I mean, come on. Let me just tell you, Noelle's my white friend that shows the fuck up. Okay,
he had blackface on.
I mean, I would have been like the bitch, you know. But I was like, the next morning, it's like there's pictures in the group chat. And it's like Noelle went off and she was screaming at him. He was apologizing to me the next day. I'm like, I don't know what happened. Like, what?
I was like, well, let me explain.
Noelle was very upset.
Evidence A, I'm submitting, you know, like take a look at this shit.
I see why all that happened. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
All right. So look, tips to be more media literate. Now we have posted a couple things on Instagram. I'm going to pull it up. Okay.
So I really liked this post. It talks about like stopping the spread of misinformation. And we actually, you know, when we episode over 0, we talk about misinformation, disinformation, the differences between it, you know, and a lot of those tactics that are used. So, and this has a lot of sources that are listed on the post, and we can put it up again on our social media because there's a lot of like different fact-checking organizations that are listed and the sourcing of it. But let's just kind of go through this. It's stopping the spread of misinformation in 8 steps. So the first one was taking a minute to think. And we talked about this actually last week. Did it cause a strong emotional reaction? Like, did you feel yourself triggered from it? Are they creating fake news or just portraying something in a way to evoke fear or anger or shock? Does it confirm your existing beliefs? So if you're just reading something, you're like, oh yeah, like, of course, you know, like we were saying, prove it wrong, look at a different source. Does it even provide sources? Like, are you able, when I went back to look up that statistic, like I'm able to find the source and go and find out what the poll was and get more information about it. Like, does it even do that? Or does it just make a statement? Yeah. So those are ones that we, you know, already even talked about. Do you want to read that one?
Sure. So we're going to read beyond the headline, right? So shocking headlines are designed to generate more clicks, like I had said in our previous episode as well. That's sensationalism and emotionalism. So just really getting a gut reaction out of you, something that you really connect with and then believe to be true. So really be wary of clickbait, ultimately.
And one of the things that I thought was interesting that we actually didn't talk about it last week, it was one of the last ones, but it was saying like even just the placement of headlines on a website or on a page. Is it in the center, in the top? Is it like a top right little blurb, right?
It's like a fucking menu at a restaurant.
Exactly. But like they're purposefully putting certain things in certain places to get people to click on it, to get people to pay attention to it.
And I think you as a psychologist and having like taking classes, like that's something that's so interesting to me because there's so much psychology built into how people perceive this information and what gets them to believe certain things. So it's really interesting. Also checking the sources and authors. So I think that's something that's really important. Is there a source? Is there an author? If so, are they credible? Who do they work for? What type of work have they done in the past? So always questioning who's transmitting the information is super important. Is it a legitimate source that can be trusted? And even if it can be trusted, again, checking other sources to make sure that that's in agreement as well. You know?
Yeah, and I mean, I think we're not all like statisticians and researchers, right? But when you think about journal articles that you might read, or when they're, sourced in an article, and maybe you'll go back and actually be able to pull it up, you want peer-reviewed articles. Yeah. You want articles where there's more than 20 people in a study. Like when we clicked on that poll, when I looked it up, right? I was like, 4,000
Yeah, 4,000.
Like,
okay, that's legit.
Because I could have clicked on it. It might have been like 30 people from Mississippi filled out this. You're like, okay, like not globally, I can't generalize. Yeah. Can it be generalized? Like that's the big thing when you're looking at studies or you're reading things, like how many people, who were they, from what parts of the country, when, and like kind of trying to pay attention to those kinds of indicators that are in the studies. Because let me tell you, stats, you can make anything say anything. You could take any numbers, spin them, make anything significant, just a
like
word that gets put
media,
out there. Right. So that's a really important one, I think, for sure.
And there's 8, right? Okay. So verifying the context, yes. So it can be really confusing when news stories surface completely out of context. But again, if they align with your own values, we tend to believe those without questioning as well. So always checking the publication date. So like Noelle was saying previously, the information that we shared about 72% of Americans believing that the news was fake. Checking that context, right? And so finding out when that was published. That was published in 2018, so fairly recent. And then we're able...
But also a really different time, like Trump being president, right? Like it gave context to the reason of why we were getting, 98% of Republicans saying that they thought it was fake news versus 53% of Democrats or whatever. Like the context of that time period of what was happening with Trump putting all that propaganda out there and all the polarization that was happening makes that statistic make sense.
Yeah, exactly.
More so. I do wonder, even though it's only a few years ago, like what would those numbers look like now? Yeah. Like, I'm going to go look and see if maybe there's a more recent poll that's been done or something. Because I do wonder, like, has it gotten worse for Democrats? Has it gone down for Republicans? Has it remained consistent? So that would be interesting to see.
Yeah. So really, being able to check the context, understanding what was happening during that time historically, kind of, the narratives that we were seeing, things like that. And I'll read this one and let you read the other ones, but confirming the data. So clicking on links and sources cited by the author and confirming that they're interpreted correctly. Also very important. Are these objective opinions based on facts? Are they opinion-based articles? Are they factual-based articles? So all that kind of checking for media literacy that we've shared, just continuing to do that same work. So confirming the data. Okay.
Finding at least 2 more sources. Yeah. So we've mentioned this, like you might click on one thing, it's something you already believe. You typically get all your news from this one source. So you read it and you move on with your day, as opposed to like when we went to All Sides and we were able to see multiple headlines from the right or from the center, or, going to another website. Even when I looked up that poll, it brought me to multiple websites that cited the same poll, but then also had other information in it as well. So, I think, and that's when people use the term rabbit hole. Like, I went down this rabbit hole. Rabbit holes happen when you are checking sources and you are trying to find more than 2 things. Like, how many times do we text each other and I'm like, oh my God, we started off researching narratives.
I'm like, it's 2 a.m. Why am I
still up? Yeah, and that happens because you're researching stuff. Very true, and on the internet, you just can get lost. And then you're completely like, what did I even start off looking at? Like, now we're on this tangent. We don't even know where we are. But it can come in handy because you're actually looking beyond what that initial thought was. Very true. Asking the experts. So becoming familiar with organizations dedicated to fact checking, factcheck.org. Reuters is a good one. They have a fact check. But, all sides had, where they would do their analyses and they say whether things are true or not true. And not just like opinion-based fact checks. I read an article the other day, actually about COVID, where it was like, oh, we're going to list the 8 myths of COVID and say, like, there's just like, no, this isn't true. But then they never gave any links to research. They never gave any links to any data. Yeah. They were just taking what was a myth and saying, no, this isn't true. Most people, or it's reported that. Yeah. But the article had no substance to it. And I was like, you're just pretty much reporting what other people are saying and saying it's not true. So I think trying to find like people that are experts on like, at least give me a quote from some sort of like medical doctor that's accredited or some organization, you know?
Well, I think it's interesting because, you know, in kind of doing this work around messaging and learning more and talking about media literacy and how to not be a sheep and all of this, right? It reminds me of so many other things. And one specifically is like relationships and arguing. And I'm like, oh, how many times have I been like, well, okay, so you've said whatever about me. Can you give me an example? What's the time that I did that? I'm just trying to seek more understanding for my own knowledge to understand what I did and how I can, you know, kind of course correct or whatever. And sometimes people have nothing to share. And I'm like, okay.
So you just
you know what I mean? I'm like, so you just feel that way and there's really no information to share to like corroborate why you feel this way. Like I don't, you know, and so I think people are also just like predisposed to take in information in this way, you know? So.
Well, I feel like everyone has like a filter it goes through, right? Maybe I've heard this before or I've, you know, I mean, I think we talked about it like in season 1 where you only need one situation. You can have 40 things happen that go against what your stereotypical belief. And you only need one thing to happen to confirm it.
That's so crazy.
It's like, if that's the filter that it's going through.
We're all screwed. We're all screwed.
And episode over. Okay.
Good luck, people.
But, you know, I mean, we all have emotions. We all have our mindsets and different ways of thinking, experiences that we've had, triggers that we have. And everything goes through that filter. And if you're not able to kind of think about your thinking, check that, make sense of things, then I think it could be really dangerous.
Yeah, for sure.
The last one on there, and they say most importantly, and I agree with this, is do not share without checking. I mean, and we talk about that with Lisa, right? In our episode with her, where things just spread so quickly, so fast. You're spreading things, the emotional posts spread the most because people like see it and it's just like a reflex to share it. And then how much does that proliferate like across the internet of all these things that aren't true, that are false or that are just opinions or whatever, spreading, you know, and we're being irresponsible with that. I mean, as people, we want to put all of these, calls to action out to like news sources and for them to be more responsible with their journalism and what they're reporting. But the public is in a lot of ways putting out more information than news outlets. We're all us as individuals. We're putting out stuff every day.
Well, yeah, I mean, us as individuals, we're informing the news media outlets on what they need to report on. Yeah. So
I mean, that's scary, right? They see what people are posting. They're like, I know how to slant this. I know how to word this. I know how to hook these people in. I know how to play on people's emotions. And so, you know, we have to be better than them. And we need to be responsible with ourselves, that we're not just putting stuff out there for the sake of a like or stirring the pot, you know, drama. I just think we have to be more responsible with it.
Yeah, I mean, this work fucking matters, you know? So I completely agree.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of what we talk about is like, what are we doing, right? Like, we're always like, we're trying to be better. Like, we're trying to also learn as we're going through this. We're not perfect as we go through this process. You know, what are things that we're doing as individuals, but then also like as the Unpack project, you know, to be better in terms of messaging and creating narratives and things like that.
I think like simple things, you know, for me, we've talked about this as well, just the word guys, you know.
It's so hard. Everyone's guys in New York. Like, what are you guys doing? Like everyone, I mean, that's something coming down here, and especially like in my job, having such an emphasis in my work for LGBTQ, you know, policies and procedures where I work and trying to get things done like that, and going into meetings. And I remember I was presenting at a conference for LGBTQ policy and procedure. And we had to meet beforehand. And, you know, we really try to like say our pronouns, say how we want to be referred. You know, I'm Dr. Dela Cruz. My pronouns are she, her, hers, like things like that. Just kind of, it's in our email signature, like having it just be part of common practice. And I roll into this Zoom, like a Zoom meeting to like get used to the software on the computer. And I'm like, hey guys, how you doing? Oh my, And I'm like, so embarrassed. No one said anything.
Yeah.
Right.
But they were all thinking.
They were all thinking.
In their minds, they were talking shit about
like, who is this person presenting? Like, who have you called to present at our conference? She rolls in here like, hey guys, what's up? It was just so bad. I think I texted you that day, like, I did it again. Like, I'm trying so hard. I can't knock this. It's so hard. It's really hard because my whole life is just a word that was used for everyone.
Yeah.
But it's not perceived that way. You know, like it misgenders people, and I have to be cognizant of that. And instead of me being like, oh, but I didn't mean it, everyone just mean everyone is guys, which people would do, right?
People would.
I don't need to change my
our
behavior.
word. I think it's so many words, and I'm like, maybe we just shouldn't say that because also words have meanings. You know.
But I mean, very easily, right? I could be like, oh, I'm from New York. Come on, everybody. Oh, no offense. Like, everyone's guys. And I'm just like, wanted to like crawl under the table.
Good, as you should have.
I haven't said it in a very long time.
Good job.
I'm trying to get like the folks.
And, you know? Y'all,
like different words.
Everybody.
That we can say.
Yeah, I love it.
But like, no, your God, what do you guys do? I still use it with people, friends that I know I can, like from New York, whatever. Like, I'm just like, what do you guys have to do?
What's funny, I at work, many years of working with children. I remember one time, years ago, this was probably like 2009 or 10 maybe. One of my staff at the time, we were breaking kids into groups. And they're like, all right, all the boys on the right, all the girls on the left. And there was a little boy who went into the line with the girls. And so like my team member was in the front of the line. And so all the kids are looking at him and I'm in the back. Right. And so my team member is looking at me. The kids are looking at him. He's looking at me.
Right. Everyone's like, what?
Yeah. And so like he goes into the line and I'm like, just leave it. You know what I mean? And I think that moment always sticks with me because I'm like, we shouldn't be singing that, you know? And so that stuck with me for so long. But also having like been with someone that was from the South for so long, you know, really like folks was such an easy word that just kind of like came into fruition for me.
I've never heard folks. You were probably the first person I ever heard. Because I remember saying, well, what do I say instead? Or like, what's it?
Folks,
like,
everybody
folks.
Friends.
Like I always say folks. I'm like, I literally can't even pronounce the word. Like, I'm like, folks. Like, it's like, I really have to get used to it. It just doesn't roll off my tongue.
But and I think it's like anything. It's like using pronouns, right? It's a practice that we keep trying at. And the more that we try and the more that we're cognizant of it, we get better at it, you know?
But even the boy girl thing, like for some teachers, it's probably so hard.
Oh, it's really
the only way they've known how to do something, right? I think a lot of this comes down to like being flexible, being able to evolve as people, like realizing when we talk about context, right? Things around us are changing.
Yeah.
The world is changing. We need to evolve with what's happening to be better people to those around us. And either you get stuck in your ways, your closed-minded way of thinking, or you
have
say
a growth
like,
mindset.
or you have a growth mindset and you're like, okay, how can we grow? You know? And I think, again, like a lot of this work, like with us trying to just encourage people to grow like alongside of us.
When I say and grow and support other people, it's like, it's not about you. It's rarely about you in any whatever particular situation it may be, you know? So I know one thing we're trying to work at is the word guys, but I mean, I guess I don't know really what else it is.
I think like stuff we share like online, I think we've become more cognizant of not just sharing a post, looking into things. Like I definitely think that's elevating stories. Okay, so remember when I was like, we have all white people coming on?
Oh yes.
It's like, we have a problem. It's all white people. So our first season, like we had a really diverse group of speakers come on. One of the things we really wanted to do through the Unpack project was like give voices to people who are not historically heard, right? Like have people come to the table with different experiences, who have been oppressed, who have been through lots of the things that we're talking about, and share. We want to change narratives. We want to share all this information. And that means that I'm white, obviously, right?
Are you white?
Like, here I am, white girl. But I started realizing, like, in that second season, when we were doing everything with white supremacy and white nationalism, that they were all white speakers. I was like, I don't know, I guess, like, do white people, like, are Black people not talking about extremism? Like, are they not? Because we try to find them, right?
We did.
Like,
we emailed so many fucking people.
Yeah.
But also,
you know, is this a topic, like, white people are really studying? Then we kind of kept going through, like, researching, or are we just missing the, people that are out there to come on and talk about it.
Yeah.
Like, do we need to go to different sites and go to different institutions and go to different places to find people, more diverse groups of speakers that can come on? And then literally, like, I was like, we're not just going to, and we both talked about this, like, we're not just going to have all white speakers come on. Like, we want to be purposeful with who we're having come on and speak. I made up a fake ratio of like what?
You did.
I'll bring on one white person for every
for every 4. Only one white person for every fucking 4 people of color.
But I mean, not really, right? I mean, you want different voices represented. That's the whole point of this. And some people might hear that and not think it's important, but it is important. How much of and we'll get into narratives, because when we talk about messaging is different than narratives. Yeah. Messaging is how we're framing, how we're again, we talked about images and words and language, right? The narratives are the stories. What are the stories that we're hearing out there? Which is completely different than how we message it. And I think that's been really important for me, as I trying to elevate those stories. Ones that, we historically in this country, white, cisgender, straight people are sharing their narratives. And that's what this whole critical race theory is. Again, we're like elevating white people's fears of being called racist. No. That is not the narrative that is not, that's how you want to frame it, and you want to scare the shit out of people, and it's working. But that's not the narrative that we need to be using to educate ourselves about it. So I think us being conscious about that, at least for me, has been something that has been a part of this practice for us. Yeah. Well, and I think,
so we talk about elevating stories, providing credible information, right? The sources that we're checking and checking more than 2 sources and all of that. But then encouraging people to learn and be more responsible consumers of their information, right? And so, I mean, similarly to kind of providing the past 2 that we shared, it's just really important that we are cognizant of the work that we're doing,
right?
The other people are cognizant of this work and the fact that they're sharing this information with other people, and that we have a social responsibility, you know what I mean? So I think that's kind of what I leave this episode off on. What about you?
Yeah, no. And I mean, I think we have some really good episodes coming up. We always try to have it be, for us to do a couple episodes where we talk about our own personal experiences, things we learned and researched and stuff. But we have Over Zero, we have Narrative Initiative, we have lots of people that are going to come on sharing different aspects of messaging, of misinformation, disinformation, how we can be more responsible with the narratives that we're sharing and consuming. So lots of different perspectives that I think will be really useful for all of you and really interesting to learn from. So we thank you so much for joining us today. We've had fun. We're looking forward to being able to do this with you all more frequently, coming together, just kind of hanging out and having these conversations. It's really more about kind of who we are. And so we're excited about that.
So we always ask that you grab a glass and enjoy us with whatever it is that you are drinking: beer, champagne, wine, alcohol, water, juice. It's fine. But also really just here to do the work, to learn, to grow. Sometimes this information can feel a little bit heavy. I think that's why we've kind of steered away from such heavy information, which there will be some of that as well. We'll be doing some more lives. As always, check us out on Instagram, _unpack project.com, _unpack project. If you check us out on our website, is it
the Unpack Project?
The Unpack Project.
Oh, hi, we don't know our website. Hold on one second.
theunpackproject.com as well. You'll find donation links there, our store, resources as well, our background stories, the work that we've done in the past. So we really just appreciate everyone for their support, your continued listening, and your continued growth. So thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Bye.
Bye.
Show the Unpack Project some love and be sure to like, subscribe, and review our podcast. You can also check us out on Instagram at _unpack project.
And if you enjoyed today's episode, visit our website at theunpackedproject.com, where you can make a donation that supports the research, production, and operating costs of this work.
Shout out to all of our listeners who unpacked with us today.
See you next week.
Peace.